The dojo was alive with the sound of practice mats slapping beneath feet and the sharp calls of students shouting through their drills. The black belts stood proudly at the front of the room, their movements sharp and precise, showing off their skill and confidence. Toward the back of the class, a quiet woman named Eliza tied her simple white belt around her waist and bowed respectfully before stepping onto the mat. Some of the students whispered among themselves, their smirks obvious, as they exchanged looks and pointed toward her. To them, Eliza looked out of place, a simple woman with calm eyes and no signs of intimidation. One of the younger black belts chuckled loudly and said to his friend, "Watch this beginner try not to trip over herself." The laughter spread through the group, and even the instructor raised an eyebrow as if questioning why she was even there. Eliza ignored their remarks, her focus steady as she adjusted her stance, her body calm, but her breathing deep and controlled. The warm-up began, and as the class moved into basic techniques, the black belts continued to laugh, exaggerating their punches and kicks as though mocking her presence. But then the instructor called for sparring practice, and pairs were formed. Eliza found herself standing across from a black belt much larger and stronger than her, his grin wide with confidence. The other students gathered close, waiting for what they assumed would be an easy and embarrassing defeat. The black belt lunged forward, swinging a powerful kick toward her side. But in one smooth motion, Eliza stepped aside, her body flowing with surprising speed and precision, her hand lightly tapping his shoulder as he stumbled past her. The room fell silent, the smirks fading into looks of disbelief. The black belt turned back, his grin faltering, replaced with a more serious expression. This time, he came in faster, throwing a combination of strikes, each one stronger than the last. Yet Eliza moved effortlessly, dodging, weaving her body, slipping through the attacks with calm focus, her eyes never leaving his. With one sudden movement, she caught his wrist, twisted, and sent him tumbling onto the mat. Gasps erupted from the students', shock spreading through the room as the black belt scrambled back to his feet, his pride wounded. Another black belt stepped forward, his expression sharp. "I will spar her," he declared, unable to accept what he had just witnessed. Eliza bowed respectfully, again her face calm as though she carried no arrogance or anger, only quiet control. The second black belt charged, his movements sharp and aggressive. But once again, Eliza's timing was flawless, her counters swift, her steps perfectly balanced. Within seconds, she had disarmed him of his balance, sending him crashing down to the mat as well. The dojo was silent, the laughter gone, replaced with awe and confusion. The instructor narrowed his eyes, his curiosity now piqued as he studied the simple woman who had just stunned his most advanced students. Eliza stood tall, her breathing even, her hands steady as she waited for the next command. But this time no one laughed, no one mocked her. Instead, every eye in the dojo was fixed on her in stunned silence as whispers of who she truly was began to spread. The instructor slowly stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back as he studied Eliza with sharp eyes. He had seen many students in his years of teaching, but there was something about her movements that spoke of years of discipline, not a beginner stepping into a dojo for the first time. The black belts who had laughed earlier now stood in silence, their pride shaken, their curiosity burning. One of them whispered under his breath, "Who is she?" Eliza bowed again, her face calm, her posture respectful, but there was no fear in her movements, no hesitation. The instructor finally spoke, his voice steady. "Eliza, step forward, you will spar with me." The students gasped. It was rare for the master himself to spar with a newcomer. Eliza only nodded, stepping onto the mat, her feet quiet, her eyes steady as she faced him. The room grew tense, every student watching closely, the air thick with anticipation. The instructor moved first, his strikes sharp but controlled, testing her reactions. Eliza flowed with each movement, blocking with precision, stepping aside at the perfect moment, her counters light but deliberate. The sound of feet sliding across the mat echoed through the dojo as their spar grew faster, sharper. The black belts leaned in, their eyes wide as they watched their master forced to adjust his stance, his face growing serious. Then in a sudden exchange, Eliza caught his arm, redirected his momentum, and with graceful strength she placed him in a hold that forced him to stop. The dojo fell silent again, every student frozen in disbelief. Eliza released the hold immediately and stepped back, bowing low, her respect clear even after dominating the spar. The instructor straightened his robe, his eyes locked on her, his lips curling into the faintest of smiles. "You are no ordinary beginner," he said, his voice carrying across the room. Eliza looked up, her voice soft. "I only came here to learn, but sometimes learning is remembering." Whispers spread through the students louder now, some saying she must be a master in disguise, others insisting she had trained for years in secret. The instructor raised his hand and silence returned. He turned to the class and said, "Watch her closely, for you may learn more from her silence than from all your shouting." The black belts who had mocked her earlier lowered their heads, shame mixing with respect, as they glanced at Eliza. But Eliza did not gloat. She simply returned to her quiet place at the back of the line, her calm eyes steady, her presence undeniable. And though the class continued that day, nothing felt the same. Every student watched her every movement, wondering what hidden power and story lay behind the simple woman who had shocked them all. As the next class began, the energy inside the dojo was different. No one dared laugh or whisper about Eliza now. Instead, they glanced at her with curiosity and quiet respect. The black belts who once mocked her now studied her movements carefully, hoping to understand how she moved with such skill and precision. Eliza remained silent, never boasting, never explaining. She simply followed each drill with focus, as though she had nothing to prove. The instructor, however, kept a watchful eye on her. Between exercises, he called on her to demonstrate techniques. At first it was a simple block, then a throw, then a combination of counters. Each time Eliza performed with flawless control, her movements smooth and powerful, yet never forceful. The students clapped after each demonstration, something they had never done for one another before. During a short break, one of the younger students approached her nervously, his voice quiet. "Miss Eliza, how did you learn to move like that?" Eliza gave a gentle smile, her tone soft. "I was taught long ago, but strength is not in the body, it is in the mind and in patience." The boy nodded, though he did not fully understand, but he could feel the truth in her words. The instructor watched this exchange with a thoughtful expression. Later, as the class gathered for sparring again, the instructor made a surprising announcement. "Today, Eliza will spar each of you," he said calmly, one after another. Gasps filled the room. The black belts exchanged uneasy looks, but no one dared argue. Eliza bowed respectfully, accepting without hesitation. One by one, the students stepped onto the mat. Each fought with determination, but none could match her speed, her timing, or her ability to turn their strength against them. Even when she was pushed harder, Eliza never struck with cruelty. She always ended each spar with a graceful hold or a controlled takedown that left no room for injury. By the end of the session, nearly every student had fallen to the mat at her hands. The dojo was filled with heavy breathing, but also with awe. Eliza stood quietly in the center, her presence commanding without a word spoken. The instructor finally raised his hand. "Enough," he said. He looked at Eliza, his tone filled with respect. "You did not come here to learn from us. It seems we are meant to learn from you." The students bowed deeply, their voices silent, but their respect clear in every gesture. Eliza returned the bow humbly, but said nothing, her eyes calm, her spirit unshaken. From that day forward, the dojo was no longer the same, and neither were the students who trained there. Days turned into weeks, and the dojo buzzed with whispers about Eliza. The students no longer mocked her. Instead, they lined up near her, eager to watch and copy her movements, hoping to capture even a fraction of her grace. Eliza never sought attention. She quietly performed each drill, never raising her voice, never showing pride, yet her presence pulled every eye toward her. The instructor began to structure lessons differently, often pausing the class to ask Eliza to demonstrate. At first she hesitated, but with his encouragement, she would step forward, showing a technique with calm precision, each motion simple, yet impossible to ignore. The black belts who once scoffed now bowed to her with deep respect every time they sparred, and none dared underestimate her again. But outside the dojo, rumors began to spread. Parents whispered about the quiet woman who could outmatch the strongest students. Other martial artists from neighboring dojos heard the stories. Some laughed, dismissing them as exaggerations, while others grew curious, wanting to see the truth for themselves. One evening during training, a group of visiting fighters arrived, strong, muscular men, wearing black uniforms, their belts showing years of experience. They spoke confidently to the instructor, demanding to test the skill of the mysterious woman they had heard so much about. The instructor glanced toward Eliza, his face calm, but serious. "Eliza, would you accept this challenge?" The dojo fell silent, every student waiting for her answer. Eliza stepped forward, bowed, and said in her gentle tone, "I will face them, but not to humiliate, only to teach." The visiting fighters smirked, sure of their victory. They entered the mat one after another, ready to prove themselves. The first rushed at her with aggressive strikes, but Eliza moved like water, slipping past his power, her counters clean and precise, sending him down within seconds. Gasps filled the room. The second fighter tried to use speed, launching a flurry of kicks, yet Eliza's timing was perfect. She blocked, turned, and swept him off his feet with effortless grace. The dojo erupted with shocked whispers. The visiting leader stepped forward, his expression serious, no longer amused. He demanded to face her himself. Eliza bowed again, ready and calm, her eyes steady as the room filled with anticipation for what would come next. The leader of the visiting fighters circled Eliza, his stance firm, his eyes sharp with determination. He had expected an ordinary woman, someone who stumbled her way into training, but the moment he watched her moves, he knew this would not be easy. Eliza stood relaxed, her posture unshaken, her breathing even, her gaze calm, as though nothing could break her focus. The leader lunged forward with a powerful strike, testing her reflexes, his arm cutting through the air with force. Eliza shifted lightly to the side, her hand brushing against his wrist, redirecting the attack. With minimal effort, her body flowing like a stream around a stone. The leader staggered slightly, surprised at how easily his attack had been neutralized. He tried again, faster, stronger, throwing a series of precise blows, but every strike met with Eliza's quiet mastery, each blocked or redirected without wasted motion. The dojo grew silent, the students barely breathing as they watched the exchange. The black belts leaned forward, their eyes wide. They had seen her skill, but never against someone of this caliber. Then, in a sudden burst, the leader launched a spinning kick, aiming high with power meant to overwhelm. Eliza dropped low, her movement so quick it was almost a blur, and with one fluid sweep, she caught his leg, sending him crashing down onto the mat. The room erupted in gasps, the visitors frozen in disbelief as their leader scrambled back to his feet, his face flushed with frustration. He attacked again, his movements sharper, more desperate, yet every attempt was answered with calm, precise counters. Finally, Eliza stepped inside his guard, her hand pressing firmly against his chest as she used his own momentum to push him down hard onto the mat. This time, he did not rise immediately. The dojo erupted in applause, the students clapping and bowing in admiration, their respect for Eliza shining through every gesture. The visiting fighters exchanged uneasy glances, their pride shaken as they helped their leader stand. The leader bowed his head to Eliza, his voice steady, but humbled. "You are far beyond what we expected. Your skill is undeniable." Eliza bowed in return, her voice soft. "I did not come here to defeat, I came to learn and to teach." Her words echoed through the dojo, filling the room with a quiet reverence. The instructor stepped forward, his expression calm, yet proud. "Eliza, you remind us all that true strength is not in arrogance, but in discipline and humility." The students bowed deeply once more, their eyes filled with respect and wonder for the simple woman who had shown them what mastery truly looked like. The visitors left the dojo in silence, their earlier arrogance replaced with respect and unease. The students gathered around Eliza, their voices filled with awe, some asking how she moved so fast, others wondering if she had trained in secret for years. Eliza gave the same gentle smile and replied, "Only with patience and practice and a quiet mind." Her answer left many unsatisfied, but it also left them inspired. From that day, more students began to train harder, watching her closely, copying her stances, studying her timing, hoping to discover the secret behind her calm strength. The instructor, too, grew more curious about her past. One evening after class, when the dojo was empty, he approached her, his tone respectful but firm. "Eliza, you carry the discipline of a master, yet you remain here, as if you are a beginner. Tell me why." Eliza paused, her gaze drifting toward the polished floor, as if seeing memories reflected there. Finally, she spoke softly. "I trained long ago under a teacher who valued silence and patience, but life pulled me away. I came here not to prove anything, only to remember what I had forgotten." The instructor nodded, his face thoughtful, though he did not press further. He could feel there was more to her story, more than she was willing to share. Weeks passed, and Eliza continued to train her presence, transforming the dojo. Students no longer mocked or boasted, instead they practiced with focus and respect, their laughter replaced by determination. Even the black belts who once stood proudly at the front now humbled themselves to learn alongside her. But one evening a letter arrived at the dojo sealed with a mark none had seen before. The instructor opened it, his face tightening as he read aloud an invitation to a regional tournament where the strongest martial artists would gather to compete. The letter also contained a challenge. A rumor of a mysterious woman who had humbled black belts had reached the ears of other masters, and they demanded proof. The students immediately turned their eyes to Eliza, whispers filling the air. The instructor looked at her carefully. "Eliza, will you accept this challenge?" The dojo grew silent, every heartbeat waiting for her answer. Eliza raised her eyes, calm and steady, and gave a small, respectful nod. The news of Eliza's acceptance spread quickly through the dojo and beyond. Students buzzed with excitement and nerves, whispering about how she would face fighters from across the region, each one skilled, disciplined, and eager to test themselves. The black belts who once mocked her now stood by her side, their respect complete, some even offering to train with her before the tournament, though they knew they had little to teach her. The instructor arranged special sessions preparing the students for what lay ahead, but his focus often shifted to Eliza. He tested her endurance, her reactions, her balance, but each time she moved with the same quiet precision, never faltering, never showing strain. It was as though her strength came not from muscle alone but from a well of calmness that no one could touch. The day of the tournament arrived, the arena filled with fighters, spectators, and masters from many schools. Banners hung high as drums echoed to signal the beginning of the matches. When Eliza entered the floor, heads turned, whispers spreading through the crowd. Some scoffed at the sight of a simple woman in a plain uniform with only a white belt tied around her waist. Others leaned forward, curious, their eyes sharp with interest. The announcer called her name alongside her first opponent, a towering man with a red belt known for his speed and brutal strength. He bowed quickly, then launched forward, his strikes fierce and rapid, each one carrying the weight of years of training. But Eliza's body moved like flowing water, slipping aside, redirecting, blocking with the smallest movements, her expression unchanged, her eyes never leaving him. Within moments, she caught his wrist, spun gracefully, and sent him to the mat, his body thudding hard against the floor. Gasps filled the arena, some in shock, others in admiration. The announcer declared her the winner, but the crowd was already buzzing. Who is she? Where did she learn to fight like that? The next opponent stepped forward, his reputation known as a master of kicks, his legs sharp as blades. He wasted no time unleashing a barrage of strikes, but again Eliza glided past them, her timing perfect, her counters precise, until one swift sweep sent him crashing down. The noise of the crowd grew louder, each victory building more astonishment. In the stands, the other masters leaned forward, their faces hard, their pride challenged by this quiet woman who fought with such control. And as Eliza bowed, once more awaiting her next opponent, the arena grew tense, for everyone knew the fights would only grow harder from here. The announcer called the next match, and the crowd hushed in anticipation. This time Eliza faced a seasoned fighter with decades of experience, his name whispered with respect among the spectators. He stepped onto the mat, his movements steady, his eyes sharp, studying her with the seriousness of a true master. Unlike the others, he did not rush. Instead, he circled slowly, testing her presence, feeling the rhythm of her stance. Eliza mirrored his calm, her breathing, even her gaze unwavering, as though she could already see his intentions before he moved. When he finally struck, it was fast, precise, a strike honed by years of practice, but Eliza responded in perfect harmony, her block flowing seamlessly into a counter. The exchange became a dance, strikes and counters echoing through the arena, each movement so sharp the audience barely had time to breathe. For the first time, Eliza was pressed, her opponent pushing harder, each attack sharper, but her body adapted, her calmness unbroken, her timing flawless. Then, in a sudden shift, she stepped inside his guard, redirected his strike, and with a graceful motion swept his balance, sending him down hard onto the mat. The crowd erupted, their cheers shaking the air, some rising to their feet in disbelief. The master lay still for a moment, then smiled as he rose, bowing deeply to Eliza, respect clear in his eyes. "You carry the spirit of a true warrior," he said, his voice carrying across the arena. Eliza returned the bow silently, her humility unshaken. But the announcer's voice cut through the noise, declaring the final round. Her last opponent was the reigning champion, a fighter known across the region for his ruthless precision, his victories countless, his pride towering. The crowd roared as he stepped onto the mat, his gaze fixed on Eliza with intensity. He pointed toward her, his voice loud enough for all to hear. "This will be your last fight. You will not walk away the winner." The arena fell silent, the tension sharp as steel. Eliza bowed respectfully, her calm eyes meeting his, as she whispered softly, "Then we shall see." The crowd leaned forward, every heartbeat waiting for the clash that was about to begin. The champion took his stance, every muscle coiled with power, his presence alone enough to make lesser fighters hesitate. Eliza stood across from him, her posture relaxed, her breathing steady, her gaze soft but unshaken. The referees signaled the start, and the champion exploded forward, his strikes sharp and merciless, each one designed to overwhelm and break his opponent quickly. The arena echoed with the sound of his power, his fists cutting through the air, his feet pounding the mat. But Eliza moved with calm precision, stepping just beyond reach, redirecting each strike with the smallest motion, her body flowing like a river around unmovable rocks. The crowd gasped as the champion grew more aggressive, his frustration building with every missed blow, his pride challenged by her effortless defense. He unleashed a high kick aimed for her head, lightning fast, but Eliza bent low, slipping beneath it, her hand brushing his leg, and with a gentle twist of balance he stumbled. Gasps rose louder, the audience unable to believe what they were seeing. The champion roared, charging again with a flurry of strikes, his power shaking the floor, his speed nearly unmatched. Yet Eliza remained composed, each step placed with perfect timing, each block flowing into a counter, her calmness unbroken even under his storm of fury. Finally, the champion attempted his finishing move, a devastating spinning strike known to end matches instantly. But Eliza anticipated it, her eyes sharp, her body moving before his rotation completed. She stepped inside the spin, caught his arm, and redirected his momentum, slamming him down onto the mat with graceful finality. The entire arena erupted, the sound of shock and disbelief blending with wild cheers. The champion lay stunned, staring up at the ceiling, unable to comprehend how he had been defeated. Eliza bowed deeply, her respect clear, as the referee raised her hand, declaring her the winner. The crowd roared her name, though most had never known it before, their voices filling the arena with thunderous respect. The champion slowly rose, his pride bruised, but his expression softened. He bowed deeply to her, his voice steady. "You are beyond what I imagined. Your strength is greater than mine." Eliza bowed in return, her voice quiet. "Strength is not about being greater than others, it is about being greater than yourself." The arena fell silent at her words, every fighter, every master, every spectator holding on to them as though they had been waiting to hear them all along. The crowd remained on their feet long after the match ended, their cheers echoing like waves crashing against the walls of the arena. Eliza stood at the center, her posture calm, her face serene, as though she had not just defeated the strongest fighter in the room. Students rushed forward, their eyes wide with awe, some bowing in respect, others simply staring in disbelief. For so long they had doubted her, mocked her, even laughed at her, yet now they saw her for what she truly was, a master of not just skill but wisdom. The champion walked closer, his head lowered, his pride transformed into humility. He extended his hand, and Eliza accepted it with grace, the moment sealing a new bond of respect between them. In that instant the atmosphere shifted, the arrogance that once filled the dojo replaced with reverence. Eliza turned toward the students, her voice calm and steady. "The lesson today is not about defeating someone stronger, it is about finding balance within yourself and never letting fear control you." The words sank into their hearts deeper than any strike or kick could ever reach. From that day forward, the dojo changed, no longer a place of arrogance, but of discipline, humility, and respect, all because of the simple woman they once underestimated. And Eliza walked away from the mat, her presence leaving behind a legacy greater than any trophy or medal could ever hold. The legend of the woman who humbled black belts spread far beyond the dojo, inspiring countless others to rise above doubt and embrace their true strength.